Modern horror films have come a long way. Their ancestors, the films of the German Expressionism movement. A discussion of this movement's history, key characteristics, influential and significant filmmakers and films will now take place in an attempt to make evident the influence of these films on modern contemporary filmmakers, such as Henry Selick.
German Expressionism first appeared in the fine arts in the early 19th century and only became popular in film roughly 10 years later, after World War I. The movement was heavily influenced by the horrors of the war and the economic depression that followed. The German government banned all foreign films in 1916. This sudden demand for more domestic films led to a dramatic increase in films being produced in Germany annually. However, in the wake of the war, German audiences had no interest in bright romantic topics and craved more relevant themes in their stories.
As a result of the population's desire for relatable films, films produced in this period expressed darker themes of violence, betrayal, and cruelty. It portrayed a collective fear and anxiety of the nation through distorted and nightmarish imagery. Lotte Eisner, a German film critic, labelled it as Helldunkel, which she defined as a sort of twilight of the German soul, expressing itself in shadowy, enigmatic interior, or in misty industrial landscapes. Studio Binder, 2020.
German expressionist artists depicted a subjective, contorted view of the world to show the dark reality that they experienced. Because of this, they did not care if their work was aesthetically pleasing, but rather aimed to shock and impact their viewer. This was achieved through unrealistic mise-en-scenes that included unrealistic otherworldly sets, gritty costumes and makeup, and unrealistic exaggerated characters. According to movements in film, German Expressionism portrays a subjective emotional view of the world rather than an objective reality. Characteristics of this movement include high angles and extreme camera tilting, deep shadows and chiaroscuro lighting, unrealistic and impossible mise-en-scenes, dark themes, melodramatic performances, a distorted view of the world, and exaggerated surrealist imagery.
German Expressionism conveys inner conflict through the use of expressive performances and the use of abstract mise-en-scène choices. Robert Wien directed a film called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, where he made use of the conventions of German Expressionism. For example, in this scene, the walls and the floors have been created with abstract angles, and the streets seem as if they lead to nowhere. The film also consists mainly out of low-key lighting. These elements allow the audience to have a deeper look inside the character's mind. It also creates suspense, unease, and tension within the audience. Nosferatu is a film directed by F.W. Murnau, which also uses the elements of German Expressionism. This film relies on horrifying imagery to convey meaning, since it is a silent film. Murnau exaggerated this character's features in order to create a horrific look. In this clip, you can see that the character is extremely tall, he has long arms, long fingers, and he moves in an unhuman-like manner. These exaggerated features create an abnormal-looking character. Nosferatu's horrifying images has had a huge impact on horror directors of today. The horror film Babadook was highly inspired by Nosferatu's imagery, stylistic elements, and low-key lighting. The next film we'll be looking at is Metropolis. Metropolis is a film directed by Fritz Lang. This film is about two worlds, namely the world of the rich and the world of the poor. The rich inhabit the upper city, and the poor are forced to work and live underground. This film plays on the human fears of the future, the fear of technology taking over and workers being dehumanized. This representation of the future has had an influence on Charlie Chaplin's film Modern Times. Metropolis makes use of stylistic elements such as distortion, big buildings, and a crowded skyline to convey a sense of story. The city is shaped to build the viewer's expectations about the future. The Hunger Games is also a film that was influenced by the contrast of the rich and the poor. The Hunger Games was also influenced by the dehumanization that was evident in Metropolis. This proves that German Expressionism didn't only influence horror directors, but also sci-fi directors.
Henry Selick, a stylistic director highly influenced by German Expressionism, gives us a taste of his quirky ideas combined with characteristics of German Expressionism. Let's firstly look at The Nightmare Before Christmas, a great example of a film capturing the essence of German Expressionism. As we can see in this frame, the film set isn't very realistic. However, this unrealistic set, combined with the curly cliff, big moon, and ominous colors, makes us feel like we're watching a German Expressionist film, mainly because of Henry Selick's focus on setting a mood, but with no actual attempt at realism, much like the German Expressionists. Henry Selick ensures Halloween Town gives off a similar creepy atmosphere as Caligari by warping the town with jagged, sharp designs and filming it from skew angles. The acting style for German Expressionist films were highly stylized. The actors used their bodies to complement the wild diagonal sets, resulting in a dance-like performance. Even though The Nightmare Before Christmas isn't a live action, its characters were highly exaggerated, creating a natural emphasis on their movements. Let's look at Jack. Jack is tall, skinny, bony, has clear-cut facial expressions, and expressive fingers. This magnifies his every motion. Another sign of German Expressionism influencing Henry Selick is his use of lighting and shadows. In The Nightmare Before Christmas, the tombstones give off significantly large shadows. This is done to indicate that scary narrative of Halloween. Not only did this movement's distorted buildings and artificial geometries influence Henry Selick, but also their use of odd makeup and costuming. The characters in The Nightmare Before Christmas have very distinct features, which add to the overall feel of the film.
Characteristics of German Expressionism can be traced throughout Henry Selick's stop animation film, Coraline. The film follows a young Coraline as she explores her new home and discovers a secret door. Traveling through a tunnel, she discovers an alternate world, which appears to be a reflection of her own, but is evidently better. Her initial joy of the discovery soon turns to horror as her other mother attempts to keep her there indefinitely. German Expressionism is brought to light with the film's use of mise-en-scène. In Coraline's real world, her home is established as mundane through dull shades and low-key lighting. As night arrives, the rooms darken, and chiaroscuro lighting is utilized to create feelings of unease. The influence of German Expressionism becomes especially evident when Coraline enters the parallel world. In the parallel world, asymmetrical angles, silhouettes, and shadows are reminiscent of German Expressionism films such as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The film's use of fantastical geometrical angular sets indicates clear blending of German Expressionism elements. The disproportionate bodies and the over-exaggerated movements of the characters also emphasize the sense of surrealism in the film. In The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Caligari exhibits a somnambulist on the fairground. Similarly, the other mother presents Coraline with a world that instantly captures her attention. Like Caligari, the other mother transforms from showman to terror, or, according to Müller, is both the solicitous and nurturing mother and threatening and fearsome crone. Coraline can be viewed as a reflection of the physiological state of the Germans during the Weimar period. Coraline found her reality unsatisfactory, and so did the Germans. Mimicking the way in which the Germans retreated into their shell, Coraline retreats into a parallel world, packaged as a reprieve from the boredom and suffocation of her new home. As the film draws to an end, Coraline, aided by Wiley and a talking cat, finally gathers the resources and courage to return to her real parents and life. Although the movement came and went, German Expressionism's surrealist approach to art imitating life has had a lasting effect on modern film, which is distinctly recognizable when observing filmmakers such as Henry Selick. The movement's characteristics can be seen in the modern horror films of today. German Expressionism gave birth to horrors, which raises the question, Why do people enjoy horrors? Stephen King said, "We make up horrors to help us cope with the real ones." Similar to the Germans' desire to escape their reality and Coraline's desire to escape her boredom, horrors offer viewers an escape from their comfortable and mundane lives or their unpleasant realities.